There comes a time when the truth is no longer something you whisper about in corners. It stands up, it walks into the room, and demands to be acknowledged. That's exactly what happened when a resolution was brought before the world to recognize slavery and the transatlantic slave trade for what it truly was, one of the gravest crimes ever committed against humanity. This wasn't just about history. This wasn't about something buried in the past that we're supposed to get over. This was about accountability. This was about global acknowledgement that millions of African lives were stolen, broken, and exploited to build nations that still stand strong today. And when that truth was placed on the table, most of the world said yes. They agreed. They nodded. They recognized the horror. But then something else happened that we need to talk about. Some hesitated. Some stepped back, and a few said no. Now that's where the real story begins, because the question isn't just about who voted yes. The real question is, why would anyone hesitate when it comes to acknowledging such a crime? Why would anyone step back from truth unless that truth threatens something they benefit from today? Over 100 countries stood in agreement. They recognized slavery as a crime against humanity. They supported the call for justice, for acknowledgement, for some form of repair. But then there were those who abstained. They didn't say no outright, but they didn't stand firm either. And then there were 3 countries that voted against it. Now think about that. Out of the entire world, only a handful had the boldness or the audacity to say no. And that no speaks louder than 1,000 speeches about equality and justice. Because you can't say you believe something is wrong and then refuse to stand on that belief when it matters. See, this is where things get real uncomfortable, because we're not just talking about obvious enemies. We're not talking about people who openly declare their hate. Those are easy to identify. Those are the wolves. You see them coming, you brace yourself, and you deal with them head on. But what about the ones who smile in your face? What about the ones who say, yes, slavery was wrong. Yes, racism is bad. Yes, we support equality. But the moment the conversation shifts to reparations, to actual compensation, to tangible justice, suddenly there's hesitation. Suddenly there's a problem. Now it's, well, I don't want my tax dollars going to that. And that right there is where the mask slips. Because let's tell the truth clearly. Your tax dollars don't work the way you pretend they do when it comes to black people. Money is taken, a percentage is removed, and then the government decides where it goes. It funds wars. It funds projects you'll never see. It funds things you don't question. But suddenly, when it comes to repairing the damage done to black people, now you want to micromanage every single penny. Now you're concerned. Now you're outraged. But that's not confusion. That's exposure. Let's break something down real simple so nobody can pretend they don't understand. Reparations are not about punishing individuals who never owned slaves. They're about nations correcting the damage created by systems that those nations built, benefited from, and still profit from today. Other groups have received reparations. Other nations have been compensated for injustices done to them. There was no worldwide hesitation then. There was no sudden concern about fairness or tax dollars. You hear that, white liberals? But when it comes to Africans and people of African descent, the conversation changes. Why? Because acknowledging the full weight of that crime means acknowledging the full responsibility that comes with it. And that's what makes people uncomfortable. It's not about money. Let's stop pretending it is. It's about power. It's about control of the narrative. It's about avoiding a global admission that what was done wasn't just unfortunate or part of history, but a calculated system of exploitation that shaped the modern world. Because once you fully admit that, you can't hide behind excuses anymore. You can't say that was long ago. You can't say that wasn't me. You can't say move on, because the effects never moved on. They're still here. And deep down, the resistance comes from knowing that if justice is truly served, it will shift things in a way that many are not ready to accept. This vote didn't just reveal political positions. It revealed character. It showed who is willing to stand on truth when it's easy and who disappears when that truth demands action. It showed that some would rather agree in words but retreat in practice. And it exposed a painful reality. Not everyone who speaks about justice actually wants it. Some only want the appearance of it. You cannot build a just world on selective memory. You cannot claim moral authority while refusing to correct moral wrongs. And you cannot expect people to heal from wounds that are constantly dismissed, minimized, or ignored. Because every time justice is delayed, the damage continues. Every time truth is softened, the pain remains. And every time accountability is avoided, the divide grows wider. This isn't over. The vote was just a moment, but the conversation is far from finished. The question still stands for the world. Do you truly believe in justice, or do you only believe in it when it's convenient? Because at some point, everyone has to choose, and history will remember those choices. I'll say this plainly. I would rather deal with someone who openly opposes me than someone who pretends to stand with me but disappears when it counts. Because at least with the first, you know where you stand. But the second, that's where the real danger lies. And what we saw in that moment was not just politics. It was truth. Raw, uncomfortable, undeniable truth. And whether people accept it or not, that truth is not going anywhere. LanceScurvX.com, hit me up. If you disagree, come to me. Let's talk about it. Peace.